Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by New York-based artist and Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient, Amber Vittoria. Hailing from Patterson, New York, Amber discovered her passion for art at an early age. After graduating Boston University's College of Fine Arts with a major in graphic design, Amber went on to work at Victoria's Secret and VaynerMedia before shifting into freelance full-time. In early 2021, Amber entered the NFT scene and has gone on to sell out all of her collections. In her spare time, Amber's on a mission to visit as many of the national parks in the United States as possible. Amber, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
That was an awesome intro. Thank you for having me. I was like, yep, this is great.
You're like, accurate? Good.
I'm glad. I need to copy pasta that for myself. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you on. And I want to start with, where did this passion for visiting national parks come from? And what is the best of the national parks that you've been to so far?
That's a great question. I think my first national park I saw was the Grand Canyon. And then a few years after that, I went to Acadia National Park with my parents. And I was just always really inspired by how diverse and beautiful they all are, especially in the United States. I know there are national parks in every country. I think I need like 10 lifetimes to see all of them. But for the United States in specific, after going to Acadia, I was like, I want to start seeing the rest of them. So I've seen 26. I'm going with my husband and I are going with my parents in early June for my birthday to see Yellowstone in a few weeks. So I'm excited about that. But my favorite thus far is Petrified Forest National Park. And basically, it's definitely a sleeper park. I don't think that too many people know about it and or visit it. But essentially, millennia, I want to say, ago, it was a forest. A lot of the trees fell, covered by water. They petrified all the wood. The water went away. The sand uncovered it, and then they're petrified and they're turned into crystal. So they're like crystallized pieces of rock, and they're beautiful. They're all like all these different rainbow colors, and it looks like you're on a different planet. So it's very in line with my artworok. So I think that's why that one's my favorite so far.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
That's like, I want to check that out for sure.
I was like, do you share the video for this podcast too?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have some, so you can't collect, I think you can still hear me. You can't collect the rocks in the park itself, but if you go to like nearby like rock shops, they have, they legally sell different types of petrified rocks. So here's just like one. Not the best. I felt like I have two. Here we go. So I bought these two just as a souvenir. Usually I collect rocks just like on the ground, but in national parks you can't do that. So I buy rocks from rock shops. It's a good excuse for shopping. So basically that's one that's like not a perfect example, but all of those like lines are different levels of wood. This is a better one. This one was slightly more expensive. That's why. So this looks like a little tree, like a little branch. And then inside, so they're actually rocks now. So those two I bought in the nearby area. So yeah, but the ones in the park themselves are huge. They're like huge tree trunks, and they're like very rainbow colored, and they're beautiful. So I'm glad that they are protected.
That is incredible. And you mentioned your parents there, and my understanding is that your mother was very encouraging of your pursuit of art. And I'm curious how pivotal that was for you, or how much of an impact that has made on your career as an artist, having that encouragement from your parents.
Yeah, I'd say I have two memories, each specifically with my parents. One of them was probably like 5, and I was scribbling in a coloring book, and my dad was like, "Oh, teaching me how to color," and then I went back to scribbling. And then fast forward a few years to when I was like 10, I was applying to like a studio art program that we had in our middle school, and my mom was like, "Oh, have you ever thought about doing art for, your life?" And I didn't know that that was a thing. Also, I was 10, so I wasn't really thinking about like work. But both of those memories stick out amongst many of how my parents have always been encouraging. And I think it definitely helped because, a lot of artists become artists in spite of, the people that raised them being hesitant towards it. But I definitely became an artist because they supported that. So a little bit of them is in all of the pieces that I make. And I'm really thankful to have parents that support me and my brother in what we want to do with our lives.
Now, according to your Instagram bio, through simple form, ribbons of color, and poetry, her work aims to represent nuances of womanhood. At what point did you decide this would be the focus of your work?
I would say probably in my early 20s. So not too dissimilar to many an abstract artist. My work started off very figurative, having worked in advertising, but then also predating that. And while I was in college, seeing a lot of art in museums and galleries, I struggled to relate to how women were represented within the art space, but then also depicted within art itself. So a lot of my earlier works were attempting to make portraits of women that I could relate to. And then as I evolved as an artist and as a person, those concepts grew to be a bit more abstracted. That's when I started to layer in the poetry that I'd write for myself, and just trying to take each piece and ensuring that it, represents the lived experiences that I've gone through, but also those of the women within my life, just to create something that's a little bit more relatable for people, because I feel like sometimes we forget that we're all people. So, yeah.
One of the cool things about this space, blockchain and crypto, is that, when we launched this show, I think we originally anticipated we'd be talking to primarily founders and various people from different coins and projects. But what we found through something like NFTs is that, no, that is now encapsulated entertainment. And we've talked to a few artists, and it's just such a cool concept that the space has been so inclusive to so many different people and different interests. And so according to OpenSea, you joined in February 2021. So I'm curious, what's the backstory? How did you first learn about NFTs? And at what point were you like, I'm going to give this a go?
I guess I inadvertently learned about NFTs probably in 2018. I didn't know that they were called NFTs. I learned about crypto kitties, where you could, buy and sell these kittens on Ethereum. And I remember reaching out to them being like, "Whoa, can you do this with other artwork?" And they're like, "Yeah, I guess, but we're kind of looking for freelance artists to draw cats." So I was like, "Oh, I could not do those. I could not do that justice." So kind of forgot about it. And I was like, future me will definitely love that. But I thought maybe 10 years from now. And then February-ish of last year of 2021, my husband came up to me. He's like, "Hey, a few of my friends bought these things called CryptoPunks," and they explained NFTs to me. And it was like, "Should we get one?" I'm like, "Oh my God, they're so cute." They reminded me of these little printable dolls that were 8-bit pixel artworks. I don't know who made them, but in middle school, all the kids in my class would print a bunch of them and put them on their notebooks. So that's kind of what that reminded me of. And I'm very nostalgic. I was like, "Let's get a bunch of them." And he was like, "So they are $30,000. And I was like, "That's dumb." So I gave it the week. I remember that was on a Friday, and then I gave it the weekend, and I did some research, and I was like, well, we had money saved to buy a car because our parents live within driving distance of New York City, and that was pre-vaccine, and we weren't taking Metro North to see our parents like we would normally. So we were going to buy a car instead of renting one each time we wanted to go see them safely. But then the news about the vaccine rolling out to everybody was starting to hit at that time, and I was just like, "Yeah, fuck it, let's buy one of these."
Yes.
So I was just like, "Sure, we'll split it." And I was like, either this will be the best decision I've ever made, or I'll look back at this and laugh, and be sad that I'll never own a car. That's all. But luckily, we got vaccinated and boosted. Now we take Metro North to see our parents. And so the one that Dave ended up picking out, the punk that we had, we liked the fact that she had sunglasses and an earring and like a red lip, and like we liked the vibe. So that's the one we went with, and that's now my profile picture. It was Dave's profile picture for a while, but then as I started to gain some traction in the space, he's like, I think you should use it as your profile picture. And I was like, okay. So that's how I got into it. And then in terms of selling my own artwork, probably March of last year, I started to sell a few pieces, and the struggle was I wanted to get the physical pieces to the collectors, and a lot of people wanted to stay anonymous, and rightfully so. So it's like, I don't know if my artwork is really a fit, so I'm going to pause. And I think I tweeted that out at some point. Maybe not. Maybe I thought I was going to. But I was like, I'm going to pause and I'm going to observe what other artists are doing in this space. A lot of the artists that were, gaining stride were digital only artists. Like 100% of their artwork was made digitally. I do create digital work. A lot of that's for client projects, just so it could scale, be out of home. It could be manipulated for different use cases. But a lot of my own work was done by hand. So it's like, let me see how I could kind of fit in. So I paused and kind of lurked for a long time. And then the summer of 2021, I was like, I started to develop personal work that was more digital. I was like, let me enter the space this way. That way the barrier to mailing things to people is lifted and I could kind of just have fun. So I sold a few collections that were done digitally. And then as I gained more traction and people were like, oh yeah, you're a human being, you're not going to take my address and put it on blast. I started to sell paintings and pieces that I did physically as one NFTs. And then fast forwarding into early 2022, I started doing editions of my physical works that I kept for myself. So that was a really nice way to have a more accessible entry point, not too dissimilar to that of limited edition prints within printmaking, but doing them as NFTs. So that's kind of been my balance as of late. And it's been really awesome. I thought that this would just be kind of like another way for me to, sell my artwork and get my name out there. But really, I've been able to meet so many wonderful people that I talk to on a daily basis, and to be able to make friends and, kind of enter into this community that supports artists in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime. Granted, I'm not that old, but within my lifetime, it's been really refreshing.
That's awesome. I love the car or
CryptoPunk.
JPEG.
Yeah, I know. I was like, a car depreciates.
Yeah.
I was like, a car guaranteed depreciates over time, but then you can use it. But then living in New York City, paying for parking and everything, we're trying to balance that. So I was like, well, the JPEG doesn't need to be maintained, so we'll do that, and
no mechanic needed for a JPEG.
Yeah, no mechanic needed, no parking spot and bumper buddy to make sure that it doesn't get hit in the city. So I think honestly the news of the vaccine was I was like, okay, if I'm vaccinated, my parents are vaccinated, I won't kill them if I take Metro North to see them. So I think that was the tipping point for me to be like, I'll take the $15,000 I had saved for a car and combine it with my husband and get a punk.
I have to ask.
And now I'm never going to sell it, so I don't know.
I have to ask though. So I mean, I know we just talked about your parents being supportive, but did they know of said plans to buy the car? And then did you then have to explain to them the different purchase, and how did they take that news?
They were like, that's kind of when I introduced them to the idea of NFTs. My dad and I since have done a collaborative edition drop of paintings that we made together. They were just like, well, I mean, we were renting cars, you could do a zip car situation for just the day. And they were like, yeah, when you were talking about saving for a car, we were like, where the heck are they going to park it? What happens when things eventually open up? And you're paying parking in Manhattan, at least, is anywhere between, depending on the type of car, where you park anywhere from $300 to $700 a month on top of. So it's really expensive. So they're like, well, worst case, at least you like what it looks like, and it might just be an art investment. And you can, I was like, yeah, worst case, if it goes to nothing, I'll just get a little print of it and put the dates that we've owned it in, and so they were pretty on board with it. Because buying a car, I don't know why I was gung ho about buying a car on this. I was like, we're gonna do it, guys. We're gonna get a car, and then it'll be great. So I'm glad that they too were like, I mean, you're an adult, it's your money, live your life. But the car probably wouldn't have been the wisest choice in hindsight. So I'm they were pretty chill about us getting a punk. And they're also like, you're adults, so like live your life.
That's awesome. Still ever supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of these, of all your NFTs, I mean, from a notoriety standpoint, one might think your CryptoPunk is your favorite. Is that true?
Oh, I mean, I think it's my favorite for the purpose that that was the first one that Dave and I bought together. I would say that aside from that one, my other favorite, outside of all the artwork that I've collected from some awesome artists, I would say project wise or PFP wise, Deadfellas is another one. I think that was the first one I'd have to double check my history, but I believe that's the first one that I bought myself as an NFT. Our friend Steve was telling us about them. We're like, oh my God, they're so cute. They're like little zombies. I'm going to get one. And didn't think that it would grow into the company that it has. And it's been really lovely to see their growth since. So that's another one where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll sell it down the road or I'll keep it. Now I'm like, no, well, I'm definitely going to keep it. So that's another favorite.
In terms of other artists in the space, is there anyone who has been inspiring to you or that you found just in general inspirational in the way they've approached maybe the technology or their artwork specifically?
There are a few of them. I would say off the top of my head, Sarah Bauman comes to mind. We've become friends since, which is lovely. She is the artist for Women in Weapons. And I really love that project because it speaks to the armor that women have to wear out into the world on a daily basis, especially in the United States, especially ×2 with the news that has come out over the last week about, rights for a lot of Americans potentially being stripped. So that project and the way that she's kind of visualized that has been really inspiring. That aside, she also, her full-time job was not within the arts prior to NFTs. So the fact that she went ahead, sold her artwork, and then made a project around it and really has pushed her, positioned herself to be one of the leading artists within this space is incredible. Not only to her, but also to the space in general, that you don't need to have had a following or fame or what have you as an artist prior to NFTs to be able to be a success in it. And I think that she's a great example of that.
That's awesome. Love that answer. And it's interesting tie into the next question, because I heard in another interview you were talking about you'd often be hired by brands to produce art in the month of March. But what you like about the NFT space is that it feels less like, well, it values artists for who they are rather than the virtue signaling part of it. And even on your own website, I noticed you're wearing a shirt in one of the photos that says not only March, I think. So that's clearly a point that, do you mind kind of, for the benefit of our audience, going into a little more detail with your experience with that and how NFT is, or the NFT community is a bit different?
Yeah. So before I entered NFTs, I started freelancing as a commercial artist towards the end of 2017. So my income was majority, just like you said, working with brands and editorial publications on artwork for advertising or for product or a combination of the two. And March would always be the busiest month, sometimes like February leading into March, just because so many brands wanted to be like, look, we hired a woman, we support women, we did this project. And I mean, when you're a freelancer, you're like, yeah, this is better than nothing, I guess. So I'm going to say yes to it and just kill myself for 6 weeks and then take a break in April. But after a few years of that, and then you see these brands that will work with women for March and then not really work with women until next March, that became frustrating to me. So that not only March shirt was an idea I came up with to be like, you got to just work with artists because you want to work with them year round, not because, it's their designated history month. So when I entered into this space, a lot of brands that are also starting to play with NFTs and also starting to kind of enter into crypto and Web3. I've had projects prior to March come to me for it, like L'Oreal. We worked on a collaboration together, I think back last fall. And then there are also different projects that I will be a part of coming over the next months where brands will commission artists to make NFTs. So that's been really nice that they're like, hey, we love your work. We think it resonates with our brand. Let's do something together, versus all of that plus, oh, you're a woman and it happens to be March 8th. So I think that is progress that I've wanted to see for a long time. And I think that this space is starting to push that in a way that feels very tangible.
What are your thoughts on those who collect and hold your art versus those who flip?
It's a great question. My husband and I made these cute little pins that say diamond hands and paper hands. Because I will, like, when the market's pumping, I'm like, what PFPs do I not really need that I could profit from? And I'll sell them. So everyone's like, you're low key paper handed. So I think that it really depends. I tell people that if you're going to buy my artwork to flip, tread lightly. I'm not a project. Like, I understand that there is a hype cycle, but historically artists' work, unfortunately, don't really gain value until after they pass away. And even though this space is starting to break that, for a lot of us, like, that's not going to happen within a few days or a few weeks. It might, and you might get lucky. But for people that do flip, I have in my Discord, please don't blame me if it doesn't continue to rise or if it rebalances, just because I'm just selling my artwork. Like, I'm not promising anything beyond just like, here's my art. I hope you like it. So for those that hold it, usually have that understanding, and same for those that do flip it within a short period of time. Like, I haven't really had I've had a few people reach out being like, why is the floor dropping? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, this is a weird question to ask me. Like, I don't know, but I'd say that I created those boundaries where it's like, I'm simply selling my artwork. You can buy it for whatever reasons you want to buy it, but don't project those back onto me if they aren't successful for you. So that boundary setting has definitely helped me as an artist. In the beginning, I think when everything was like flying off the shelves last summer for JPEG summer for everybody, and then we had like a recorrection of the market, not only in crypto and NFTs, but at least in the United States in the stock market, people were like, hey, why is my art worth less now? And I'm like, I asked the person that sold it for less. Like, I don't know. So creating those boundaries is something that's been pretty important, I think, for me. So I don't have an opinion whether someone holds my artwork forever or ends up flipping it. I just, for those that do sell it quicker, I'm like, just, beware. Like,
yeah. It's like one of the most irrational questions someone can go to an artist with. Why is the floor price dropping? Like, what kind of answer are you expecting? Yeah,
like,
right?
Fix your project. I'm like, I'm not a project. And I think that's the other thing too. So, like, especially most of those comments came like early fall 2021, where we were still trying to figure out like what was going to be like a collection in the sense of like World of Women or Women in Weapons, or Dead Fellows, where it's like they are a company, or Bake, where like that is a company, like this is their IP. It's a little bit different than how most companies run prior to NFTs, but like that is now how companies run, versus like these are artists, they're selling their work in thematic collections. They might have an ongoing collection, they might have a set collection. So I think that was kind of when people were starting to realize like, oh, NFTs could be more than something that I'm going to invest in and flip in a few months or a few days. So I think that's where a lot of that came from. But since then, I've kind of, with a lot of boundary work, it's been, I think, a little more clear that like certain people will come to NFTs for different reasons. And those reasons really depend on the creators. So.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode.
So Amber, you're based in New York, and it seems like it has really become a hub for NFTs and NFT artists. What advantage have you gained from being in the city, do you think?
That's a great question. I would actually say we're moving to LA next year. So let's circle back in a year. I'll let you know if New York was an impact. So whenever pre-NFTs, whenever I would give talks at different like universities or for artists and designers that were graduating, they were like, do I need to move to New York City? And because I grew up an hour and a half north of New York City, and it made sense for me to move in with my parents after I graduated and then move into the city when I got my first job, it's really tough for me to answer because I haven't lived lived anywhere else outside of Boston when I went to college. So same thing for NFTs. I haven't really lived outside of New York, so I don't know if it's something where it's an advantage. I think time zone wise, living in the United States is definitely beneficial. Or like within, same thing with Canada, within that time zone from like Pacific to East Coast. I feel for people that live in Europe and like they're awake for 9 hours and then all the Americans wake up and like, Jesus, like I have to stay up late now for all you guys. So I do think there's an advantage in terms of like the larger sense of living in one time zone versus another, but I don't know if living in New York has been a benefit for location wise. So next year, let's circle back on that. When I'm in LA, I'll be like, yes or no, I haven't noticed a difference. I just get up ass early now, so we'll see.
Nice. And we've primarily been talking about your graphic art, but you also do a lot of poetry. So where does your passion for poetry come from? And do you think we'll ever see your written word work its way into the NFT space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of my editions paintings come with a poem. So the poem's in just like the description or the metadata. But I haven't really thought of something where they can live on their own yet. I definitely think that it's an opportunity. I started writing. I've been always writing a little bit of like poetry and prose when I'd make work. A lot of my titles are very poetic. And I would just keep these poems to myself in my sketchbooks and just like on scrap papers or on notes in my phone. And I was kind of nervous to share them. But then the pandemic happened and I was just like, well, everything's to shit anyway. So I may as well just share these things on Instagram and see how they go. And then a lot of people really resonated with them. And I think especially as my work became more abstracted, it allowed people to kind of see how I was interpreting my own work without me encroaching and being like, this is how you should see my work. More just kind of like, hey, this is how I'm viewing what I'm making. So that balance of the two being put together has been really nice.
Being a former VaynerMedia employee, what do you make of Gary's entry into the NFT space with VeeFriends and how he's gone about everything? Like, I mean, onboarding a bunch of people, everything from that point of view.
It's been awesome. So when I worked at VaynerMedia, I was like in my early 20s. That's how I met my husband, Dave. He still works there. He's been there since the beginning. He's one of the first few employees. He grew up with AJ. There's a few of them that are still there. Yes, he's been there for like 14 years. I'm always like, you're old. He's not old. So I was at Vayner for a few years, and Gary starting to talk about it, I think, is what piqued Dave's interest and his friend's interest in like CryptoPunks. And then he told me, and he's like, this could be life-changing for you. And I was like, cool. So seeing Gary launch VeeFriends, I think it was about a year ago now. And then seeing how that grew was really exciting. I didn't know that he was an artist that he drew up until he started to show this work. So that was really cool to see. And then how he has kind of, built a brand around these characters and the meanings behind them, and now has started to hire, artists that do more, I guess, like cartoon-esque styles to kind of reinterpret those characters, and hopefully I see them becoming animated and story and having like themes behind each of them. So that's been really lovely to see how that storytelling has grown. But then also how he collects and supports from artists as well is really nice. I think he's definitely been one of the leaders in the fact of people that you didn't really hear about them like collecting art traditionally. I feel like you don't really know like what people of either great fame or great wealth have collected art-wise. So the fact that he's one of the first people to be like, I bought this artist's work, or I bought that artist's work, I love this artist, has been really nice. And I think so many other people, either if they're actors or musicians, have done the same thing when they've bought work from artists. So it's really kind of helped the art world in a way, seeing what other people have collected. So I definitely thank Gary for kind of leading the charge on that.
And you're one of the featured speakers at VeeCon.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What are you going to be speaking about?
So I'm going to be on a panel. I believe that they're still kind of putting the panelists together, but it's going to be about the transition of physical art into the digital and Web3 worlds. So it's going to be me and I believe a few other painters or people that make work physically, and how we've all found our footing within this space. So I'm really excited for that, because when VeeFriends came out, my husband and I, same thing. We're like, do we get a bunch of them? Do we just get one? And I saw the gift goat one, and I was like, my love language is free shit. So I was like, let's get the gift goat one. And he was like, that's the most expensive one. And I was like, that's on brand for me. So instead of getting two VeeFriends, we got the ones. Then when VeeCon was announced, it's like each attendee needs to have one to get a ticket. I was like, crap. So I just did some cold emailing. So I was like, obviously Gary has a team of people helping him put this together. And I was like, can I be a speaker? And they're like, have you done speaking things before? It's like, yes, in the before times I have. So I was like, cool, I'm able to now go and even though we have other VeeFriends now, I was like, cool, now I get to go and speak. So I'm really excited to speak on that, especially for a lot of artists that make work physically that are still trying to figure out how to enter into the space. That'll be really fun. But then also to see all the other speakers and events that they have going on. I'm really excited for it.
I also got a gift goat, and for the same reasons as you. And I'm like, this one's cool because you get free shit all the time.
And I didn't think it would be NFTs. Like, I obviously in hindsight, but back then I was like, oh, we'll get like cool sneakers or stuff in the mail. Totally. So like, which we ended up getting. But I love it because so far they've like hit off on like every artist that either I've wanted to collect and like it's out of budget, or that like are on my list that I'm like, oh, I think I can afford that in the next year or so. So I'm like, oh, this is like building an art collection without me having to do work for it. So, and then you get cute things in the mail too, which is nice, that pair with each one. So I've been pretty excited about that buy.
That is awesome. It's funny in the sort of keep going on Gift Goat. In the Discord, so there's like a dedicated Gift Goat Discord. Oh,
I know, my husband's in it because he manages all of our fancy, and we don't have any fancy NFTs. It's literally like the Gift Goat world of women and like our CryptoPunk. But like, so he has the Discord access, and he's like, oh my god! I was like, I don't even want to know. I'm just happy getting my free things, and I live my life.
Totally, I'm the same.
He's in that Discord, and apparently it's heated. So I'm like,
people get so riled up about the gifts of like, Gary, this isn't up to a certain par, and I'm like, guys, it's free. Like,
I know some people are like, I want like a Tesla, and I'm just like, if you did the quick math on that, he would be at a loss. I think if he got us all Teslas. Also, like, where the hell am I going to put a Tesla? Like. Yeah, like I don't even know. Or how do you get one for the people that don't live like in the US or Canada? I don't know. So I think that's something.
Drop it off at people's doorstep.
Oh my god. So like I think that the NFT portion was a really great surprise, and then also the physical stuff is nice because I like getting things in the mail. But I avoid that Discord. I'm like, I don't even want to know because I get mad. I'd be like, listen, you entitled people. I would get pretty mad. So I let Dave read that and just like eat his popcorn as he reads it. So.
But a core piece of that is the concept of utility. And is that something, and my apologies if you are doing something along those lines and I'm just not aware of it, but is that something that you plan on incorporating with your NFTs, or that you're already doing, that idea of some level of utility behind your pieces?
That's a great question. So I give up the boundary that it's like you are collecting my artwork, just like if you would be collecting a painting. Folks will, like in my Discord, will say I provide utility. I like doing like surprise and delights. Like today, like people were kind of bummed, and I was just like, hey, first 3 people in my collectors, the gated collectors channel on my Discord is like, first 3 people give me your wallet address, I'll send you an NFT. So like I like to do stuff like that, but it's not one of those things where it's like, this is a roadmap, this is what you're getting. Because I feel like, at least in the United States, that starts to fall into securities territory. And I know that like I'm not going to be able to afford a lawyer to figure that out. So I'd rather just be like, the exchange is like, you are collecting my artwork. And then if I want to surprise and delight people, I can. It makes it a lot easier than like, I've mailed things to collectors before as a surprise and delight, but it's kind of nice to be able to just do everything virtually too. So, because in terms of utility for artists, it's being able to collect an artwork from an artist while they're still living. I think that's really incredible and rare up until late. But then also to be able to chat with artists too. I didn't think that this was a thing, but I get so many messages on Discord and Instagram or Twitter, and that people are like, it's so great to be able to talk to you. I'm like, Okay. But I guess that's like a lot of people say that too. They're like, you get to chat with the artists that you collect from in this space. And I guess that's a form of utility as well. I don't view it like that because I'm just like, yeah, I'm a person. I'm also talkative. But so those are kind of like what I like to do with my NFTs is more of like a surprise and delight, but maintaining the boundary that you are collecting an artwork.
What are your plans for the rest of 22 as far as, as an NFT artist? Do you got any new NFT works on the way, any new collections, anything like that?
So I'm dropping an edition while ETH is kind of low. ETH is on sale on Friday the 13th. So it's just an edition of one of my pieces that I made in these last weeks that definitely came or is inspired by everything that has happened within the United States and the Supreme Court. It definitely has some anger in it, which is I try to, whenever I do a piece that is more serious, it has a bit of anger to it. I use a lot of bright colors to kind of get people comfortable with that idea and relate to, why myself and so many women and non-binary people are upset with what's happening and how it encroaches on our rights. So that's what that piece is. And I'll probably donate a portion of the profits I make from that edition to, Planned Parenthood. So I'm excited about that. That comes out on Friday. And then after that, I've been working on a collection of 999 scanned one of ones that I'm hoping to come out with in late June, early July. I could show you guys some of the scans. So I've been really inspired by generative art. I myself do not code. I'm interested in coding from a perspective of just being in awe of artists that do work with code, not to become one myself, but inspired by that, I wanted to make something that was physical, but that only lived digitally. And all of my paintings I high-res scan in to begin with. So I have a really nice scanner. And I was like, what if I collaged colors together, drop them on my scanner or arrange them on my scanner, scanned it, and then wiped those pieces of paper away. So it's like the only remnant of that artwork is digital. So they're called Memories of a Masterpiece. And they're all different scanned pieces of art. So they'll only ever exist like this. So for this one, I've got 50 left to make. And then my friends at Curious Addies are really nice to help me with the contract. It's going to be a 721A contract. Hopefully that helps with gas issues, because I know that gas has been high for people on other contracts. But the goal behind it is to kind of make something that's physical that only lives digitally. So I'm really excited about it. I added a few traits and properties to it. They're all based off of like where I was when I scanned the piece. If the piece was arranged by me or if I just kind of like dropped on the scanner and like gravity kind of take over. And then there's one other property. Oh, if my signature is covered or not. So just some fun things that kind of lean into describing the art itself and the ideas behind the collection at large. But I'm hoping to have that ready to go by the end of June, early July. So I'm excited for that.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Unique take on NFTs.
Generative.
And going from like, I've actually only ever thought of traditional like physical art making its way into the NFT digital space while still maintaining the original physical one. I've never thought of the fact just like, it's gone now, it doesn't exist anymore.
And if this one does well, hopefully, I don't know when I'll do it, but there's another process that few famous artists have done where like in printmaking, it's reductive. So you carve something out, you make a print, and then you carve the plate again and you make another print. So each print is a one of one. So something with that idea of, again, kind of destroying the physical as you go. So it only lives digitally is definitely something that if this does okay, that I want to explore more. It's just really time consuming. I started them in January. So I was like, initially it's like, I'm going to make 5,000. And then when I got to 500, I was like, I'm going to make 999. 9's my favorite number. So I was like, yeah, we're not going to do 5,000 of them. So, so I'm excited for that.
That's awesome. Amber, this has been such a good conversation. We like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with 3 questions that we ask every guest.
Oh, cool.
But before we get to that, I want to ask you one last question. And that is, if there is somebody who is an aspiring artist and they are interested in getting into the NFT space, what pieces of advice would you give that person who may be watching or listening to this episode?
I would say that there's no pressure to jump in. I feel like you have to listen to your own instinct on if you are learning by doing or learning by watching. So once you know that about yourself, I'm very much learned by doing. So I just like when I started collecting NFTs and minting NFTs, I would just like yell to my husband, like, is this right? MetaMask? What is a seed phrase? So like, I would just I'm like, did I buy this correctly? So I learned by doing. So I just jumped in. But for those that learn by kind of lurking, I would say following folks on Twitter, reaching out and asking people questions. I keep my Twitter DMs closed because when I have them open, I get hundreds of spam. And I know myself, I'll sleepily click on one, but my email is pretty easy to find. If you're listening and you want to reach out, send me an email. That's totally fine. Asking questions. So many people want to answer questions in this space. And I do think too, after all of that, if you're still hesitant, with time, things will be more streamlined. I compare it to that of the internet. When I was a kid, you'd have to plug in for the internet and like fight with your parents on you chatting with your friends on AIM versus them with their friends on the phone. And now, everyone has the internet on their cell phone and has 10 devices. So I think with NFTs too, things will get a lot more streamlined and a lot easier with time. So if you're hesitant, that's fine. You could just kind of hang out and lurk and learn that way until you feel comfortable to insert yourself. But that'd be my advice.
Great advice. Love it. So yeah, as I mentioned, same 3 questions we ask every guest. It's a segment we call You Had Me at Crypto, and Ulf is going to ask you those questions.
Oh, awesome.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Cool. The first question, who's your favorite person to follow in the crypto space, whether that's NFTs, projects, anyone in the space?
Oh, God, there are a few. First one I think of is Claire Silver. She is an AI artist, and her thoughts on art and taste and using artificial intelligence to make art is pretty awesome. Great follow.
Nice. Cool. Second question. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
Yeah. What is the price of Bitcoin now?
Let's not answer that question today.
I was like, I buy it. Same thing with like what I tweeted earlier. I think I bought some like Bitcoin when it was like 2,500. And I remember yelling at my husband being like, if this goes down, I'm going to be very mad at you for a few days. And he was like, okay. In 10 years, I don't know. I mean, I hope that it'll be at least 100,000 floating around that. Okay. Fingers crossed, if not more, but I hope. I don't know.
It's funny. We've been doing this podcast for about 1.5 years, and like the first year, which was like clearly, I don't know, everything was going up seemingly. There were some aggressive price predictions. Like the common answer was 1 million, like by far.
I mean, let's go. Let's put that out in the universe.
Yeah. Some people said 10
in 10 years.
Some people said 10 million. 3 guests have said 10 million.
Even better.
But this year it's like more conservative. I think everyone's just like taking a step back. And
it also depends on like, it also depends on just like the factors of the future, like none of us would have predicted a pandemic. And so I think that's like my hope would be 6 figures at least. That would be nice. But yeah, 10 million. Let's go. Let's go. Universe.
Let's go.
Get 10 million.
All right. The third and final question. What is the most underrated coin or project in all of crypto?
I would say the most underrated project would be Women in Weapons. I think that Sarah and her husband, Jake, are like, they're just geniuses. And I know that the market at large is taking a hit, but that project can easily develop into like what is the next Marvel, especially with more diverse representation and seeing that women want to be represented as superheroes. So I feel like that if anyone, they are the project that will do that. So yeah.
Love that answer. And we were fortunate enough to interview Sarah. I believe it was last December or November. She's an awesome person in the space. Yeah. So Amber, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for joining Ulf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.